You know, when they say marriage is built on trust, I never imagined just how fragile that trust could be. For years, I thought we had it all. Sarah, my wife, was the kind of woman who could turn heads in a crowded room without trying. Soft brown curls that cascaded over her shoulders, eyes that seemed to hold entire galaxies, and a smile that once made my heart skip a beat. I was in love with her from the moment I saw her, and when we got married, I thought we'd found our happily ever after. But nothing is ever as simple as it seems, is it? We'd been married for nearly 7 years, and though things had never been perfect, I always thought we were solid. Sure, we had our arguments, but what couple didn't? Sarah had a temper. God, did she have a temper. But we always managed to find our way back to each other. Or so I thought. Looking back, I realize now that the signs were there, hiding in plain sight, waiting for the right moment to show themselves. It all started one rainy evening. Sarah had gone out with her friends for a girls' night, something she hadn't done much since our daughter Emma was born. I didn't mind. After all, everyone needs a break sometimes, right? Emma was already fast asleep, and I settled into the couch with a beer in hand, ready to binge-watch something mindless on Netflix. Hours passed, and when I glanced at the clock, I noticed it was already past midnight. Sarah still wasn't home. I told myself not to worry. She'd probably just lost track of time. But then, 1 hour turned into 2, and I started getting that strange feeling in my gut, the kind that makes your heart race even when you try to convince yourself nothing's wrong. I texted her. No reply. Called her. It went straight to voicemail. I tried to brush off the growing sense of unease, but deep down, a part of me knew something wasn't right. It was nearly 3 a.m. when the front door finally creaked open. Sarah stumbled inside, soaked to the bone from the rain and reeking of alcohol. Her makeup was smeared, her hair a wild mess, and for a moment, I didn't even recognize her. She looked like someone else entirely. "Where have you been?" I asked, trying to keep my voice calm even though every nerve in my body was screaming for answers. Sarah waved me off, her words slurred and incoherent. "Just out with the girls. We had too much fun, I guess," she mumbled, stumbling past me toward the stairs. But something about the way she avoided eye contact, the way she brushed off my concern, it didn't sit right with me. I followed her up to our bedroom, my mind racing. I tried to ask her again, but she just collapsed onto the bed, out cold before I could get another word out of her. The next morning, she acted like nothing had happened. She kissed me on the cheek, poured herself a cup of coffee, and went about her day as though she hadn't come home in the dead of night drenched and drunk. I wanted to confront her, to demand an explanation, but the look on her face told me I wouldn't get one. That was the first time. For weeks after that, Sarah seemed different, distant. She'd come home later and later, always with some excuse. Work, errands, friends. I wanted to believe her. I wanted to believe the woman I'd spent nearly a decade with wouldn't lie to me. But the doubt started gnawing at me, slowly, like termites in the walls of a house you think is strong until it crumbles beneath your feet. Then came the first real crack, the first undeniable sign that things weren't what they seemed. It was a Friday night. Sarah had gone out again, and I was at home with Emma. By this point, I had grown used to her coming home late, but something about this night felt different. I couldn't shake the unease, and for the first time in our marriage, I did something I had promised myself I would never do. I went through her phone. She had left it on the kitchen counter, unlocked, and I told myself I was just checking to make sure she was safe. But deep down, I knew that wasn't true. I wanted answers. I needed to know why she had been acting so strange. I scrolled through her messages, not expecting to find anything, but then I saw a name I didn't recognize. Liam. My heart stopped. There were dozens of messages, each more intimate than the last, flirty, suggestive, with an undertone of something darker, something deeper. My chest tightened as I scrolled further and further, reading the words that shattered everything I thought I knew about my wife. I can't stop thinking about last night. Miss you already. I wish I was with you right now. Every message was a dagger, slicing away at the trust I had built with her over the years. My hands trembled as I clicked on a picture, an image of Sarah and this man, Liam, in a dimly lit bar. Her head was resting on his shoulder, her smile the kind that I hadn't seen in years. It was a smile meant for someone else, not for me. I felt sick to my stomach. The ground beneath me seemed to shift, and suddenly I wasn't sure if anything in my life was real anymore. How could she do this? How long had this been going on? And why? I didn't confront her that night. I couldn't. Emma was sleeping soundly in her room, and I didn't want to wake her with the sound of my world crashing down around me. Instead, I stayed up, staring at the phone, at the messages, at the photo that felt like a punch to the gut. When Sarah finally came home, she tiptoed into the house, trying to be quiet as usual. I pretended to be asleep on the couch, though my mind was racing with 1,000 thoughts, none of them making any sense. I needed time to process. I needed time to figure out what to do next. The worst part? As I lay there, pretending to be asleep, I realized that a part of me still loved her. Despite everything, despite the betrayal, I wasn't ready to let go. Not yet. And that was the most painful truth of all. The next morning, I sat at the kitchen table, the faint clatter of Emma's breakfast echoing in the background as Sarah moved about, her usual cheerful self. She wore that same warm smile I had once fallen for, but now I couldn't look at her without imagining Liam's shadow looming over us. I wanted to say something, confront her right there and then, but Emma was there, blissfully unaware of the storm brewing. I didn't want to shatter her innocent world just yet, so I swallowed the bitterness, biting down on the words that would have unleashed everything. But Sarah, she seemed completely at ease, like nothing had changed. That day I went through the motions of life like a robot, my mind miles away from the mundane tasks at work. The image of Liam and Sarah replayed over and over in my mind, like a haunting melody that wouldn't stop. The words from the messages echoed in my head, making me question everything. Was this my fault? Had I missed something? Had I driven her into his arms? I tried to convince myself that I was overreacting. Maybe it wasn't what it looked like. Maybe they were just friends. But deep down, I knew better. You don't send messages like that to a friend. You don't sneak around like that unless you have something to hide. That evening, I decided I needed to know more. I needed to see the full picture, no matter how much it hurt. After Sarah fell asleep, I snuck downstairs, grabbed her phone, and started digging deeper. This time, I went through everything: her social media, her email, her photos. What I found confirmed my worst fears. There were more photos, not just from that bar, but from other places too. Photos of Sarah and Liam together, laughing, touching, kissing. My heart felt like it was being ripped apart with each image. There were hotel bookings too, dates that lined up with the nights she'd claimed to be working late or out with friends. All lies, every single one of them. I sat there, in the dim light of our living room, with the evidence of her betrayal in my hands, and I didn't know what to do. A part of me wanted to wake her up and scream at her, demand answers, demand an explanation for why she had done this to me, to us. But another part of me felt hollow, as if the fight had already drained out of me. The next few days were a blur. I went through the motions of being a husband and father, but inside I was a mess. Every time Sarah smiled at me or reached out to hold my hand, it felt like a slap in the face. How could she pretend everything was fine? How could she act so normal when she was hiding something so dark? Finally, I couldn't take it anymore. I waited until Emma was at school and then sat Sarah down in the kitchen. She looked at me, confused, as I slid her phone across the table. "What's this?" she asked, frowning. "You tell me," I replied, my voice barely above a whisper. "I went through your phone, Sarah. I know about Liam." For a moment, she just stared at me, her expression frozen. Then, slowly, her face crumpled and she covered her mouth with her hands. "Oh my God," she whispered, tears welling up in her eyes. You went through my phone?" Of all the things she could have said, that was what she focused on, me going through her phone. Not the fact that she had been cheating, not the lies, not the betrayal. I felt a wave of anger rise up inside me. "That's what you're concerned about?" I snapped. "I found out you've been sleeping with another man, and all you care about is the fact that I went through your phone." She shook her head, tears spilling down her cheeks. "It's not what you think," she said, her voice trembling. "Liam and I, it's not serious. It just happened. I didn't mean for it to go this far." I stood up, my hands shaking. "Not serious?" Sarah, you've been lying to me for months. You've been sneaking around, meeting him behind my back. How long has this been going on? She looked down at her hands, unable to meet my eyes. A few months, she whispered. A few months? I could feel the anger boiling over now, mixing with the hurt and betrayal. You've been cheating on me for months, and you didn't think I deserved to know? You didn't think I had a right to the truth? Sarah stood up, wiping her eyes. I'm sorry, she said, her voice cracking. I never meant to hurt you. I don't know what happened. I just felt so lost, and Liam, he was there. He made me feel alive again. The words hit me like a punch to the gut. She wasn't just apologizing for what she had done. She was apologizing for what she felt for him, something I hadn't given her in years, apparently. The love we had once shared, the connection that had kept us together for so long, it was gone, and she had found it with someone else. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. I stumbled back, gripping the edge of the counter for support. You love him, I said, my voice barely audible. Sarah shook her head quickly. No, it's not love. It's not, I don't know what it is. I love you, I do. But things haven't been right between us for a long time, and I don't know. I felt like I was being pulled underwater, drowning in the flood of emotions I didn't know how to handle. What are we supposed to do now? I asked, my voice thick with pain. What happens to us? She looked up at me, her eyes red and puffy from crying. I don't know, she whispered. I don't know if we can fix this. I didn't know either. The days that followed were a strange kind of torture. We tried to continue as if nothing had happened, for Emma's sake more than anything. But the truth hung over us like a storm cloud, always there, always threatening to break. Sarah promised she would stop seeing Liam, that she would focus on us, on our family. I wanted to believe her, but trust was like a shattered mirror. No matter how hard you try to piece it back together, there will always be cracks. But then came the second twist. The one I never saw coming. The one that would change everything. Sarah wasn't the only one keeping secrets. After that day, a fragile truce settled between us. Sarah and I tiptoed around each other, careful not to break the thin thread of civility we were holding on to. I had confronted her, she had admitted to the affair, and in some twisted way it felt like that was the end of it. She promised she would cut things off with Liam, and I told myself that I would try to forgive her. For Emma's sake, for the life we'd built together, I had to try. But deep down, I wasn't sure if I could ever really let it go. Days turned into weeks, and though the anger and betrayal still lingered like a bitter taste in my mouth, we began to settle into a new kind of normal. I would catch Sarah staring at me sometimes, her eyes filled with a mix of guilt and sadness. I wanted to ask her what she was thinking, but the truth was, I was too afraid of the answer. We weren't the same people we had been before the affair, and pretending otherwise only made the distance between us more apparent. Then came the night everything changed. It was a Friday, one of those sticky summer nights where the air felt heavy with humidity. Sarah had gone to bed early, saying she wasn't feeling well, and I found myself alone in the living room, nursing a glass of whiskey and trying to make sense of my thoughts. I hadn't looked at Sarah's phone since the day I discovered the affair, but the temptation was always there, gnawing at the back of my mind. I wanted to trust her again, to believe that she had ended things with Liam, but the paranoia lingered. I wasn't proud of what I did next, but curiosity, or maybe desperation, got the better of me. I crept upstairs, careful not to wake Sarah, and took her phone from the bedside table. My hands shook as I unlocked it, expecting to find more lies, more evidence that she was still seeing him. But instead, I found something far worse. Buried deep in her messages was a conversation I hadn't seen before, one with a name I didn't recognize. Rachel. At first, I thought nothing of it. Just another friend, maybe someone she worked with. But as I scrolled through the conversation, my heart began to race. Does he know yet? No, I haven't told him. What are you going to do? I don't know. I'm scared, Rachel. What if he leaves me? You have to tell him, Sarah. He deserves to know the truth. There was a pause in the messages, then a final one from Sarah. I know. I'm just not ready yet. My mind was spinning. What the hell was this about? What truth was she hiding now? I scrolled back up, rereading the messages, trying to piece it together, but nothing made sense. My stomach churned with a sickening sense of dread. Whatever this was, it felt big. Bigger than the affair with Liam, bigger than anything I could have imagined. I put the phone back and slipped out of the room, my heart pounding in my chest. I knew I couldn't wait for Sarah to come clean on her own. Whatever she was hiding, I needed to know. I needed to find out what she was so afraid to tell me. The next morning, I confronted her. We were sitting at the breakfast table, Emma happily munching on her cereal while Sarah sipped her coffee, her face pale and drawn. I couldn't keep the secret any longer. "What aren't you telling me?" I asked, my voice steady but filled with tension. Sarah looked up, startled, her eyes wide. "What are you talking about?" I took a deep breath, my hands gripping the edge of the table. "I saw your messages. With Rachel. You said you weren't ready to tell me something. What is it, Sarah? What are you hiding?" Her face went completely white. For a moment, I thought she might faint. She set her coffee cup down with trembling hands, avoiding my gaze. I was going to tell you," she whispered, her voice barely audible. I didn't know how." "Tell me what?" I demanded, my frustration boiling over. "I deserve the truth, Sarah. After everything that's happened, I at least deserve that." She closed her eyes, taking a deep, shaky breath, and then slowly she looked up at me. The fear in her eyes made my heart stop. "I'm pregnant," she said. The words hit me like a freight train. My mind went blank, my heart stuttering in my chest. Pregnant. She was pregnant. I should have felt something. Joy, excitement, shock. But instead, all I felt was dread. Because the first thought that crossed my mind wasn't whether or not I wanted another child. The first thought was, is it mine? For a moment, the world seemed to tilt beneath me. I couldn't speak, couldn't breathe. Sarah stared at me, her eyes pleading for understanding, for forgiveness, but I couldn't give her either. All I could think about was Liam, about the months of lies and deceit, about the nights she had spent with him. How could I be sure? How could I know for certain that the child she was carrying wasn't his? You're pregnant?" I finally managed to choke out, my voice thick with emotion. Sarah nodded, tears welling up in her eyes. "Yes." I swallowed hard, my throat dry as sandpaper. "Is it mine?" The question hung in the air like a bomb waiting to explode. Sarah's face crumpled and she covered her mouth with her hands, the tears spilling over. "I don't know," she whispered, her voice broken. "I don't know." That was it. The ground beneath me shattered. The life I thought I had, the marriage I thought I could salvage, it all crumbled in that moment. The child she was carrying might not even be mine. The future I had envisioned, the family I had fought so hard to protect, it was gone. I stood up from the table, my legs weak beneath me. I needed to get out, to clear my head, to get away from the nightmare that had become my life. "I can't do this," I muttered, more to myself than to her. I need time." Sarah reached out to me, her eyes pleading. "Please don't go," she begged. "We can figure this out. I'll get a paternity test. We can—" But I couldn't listen. I couldn't stay. The weight of her betrayal, the uncertainty of the future, it was too much. I grabbed my keys and walked out the door, leaving behind the woman I had once loved, the woman who had torn my world apart. I drove aimlessly for hours, the city passing by in a blur as I tried to make sense of everything. The affair, the pregnancy, the possibility that the child wasn't mine, it all swirled in my mind, a storm I couldn't control. I didn't know where I was going or what I was supposed to do. All I knew was that my life had changed in ways I could never have imagined. Finally, I found myself parked outside a bar, one of those dingy, hole-in-the-wall places where no one asks questions. I walked inside, the dim lighting and smoky atmosphere a welcome escape from the chaos in my mind. I ordered a drink, then another, and before long, the alcohol began to numb the pain, dulling the edges of my thoughts. But as I sat there, staring into the bottom of my glass, I couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to the story, more to Sarah's betrayal than I had realized. Something still didn't add up, and as I downed another shot of whiskey, a single, nagging question echoed in the back of my mind. What else is she hiding? I spent the rest of that night at the bar, drinking myself into oblivion, as if the whiskey could somehow wash away the mess my life had become. But no matter how much I drank, the weight of Sarah's betrayal, the uncertainty of the child she was carrying, refused to leave me. I could feel it like a stone in my chest, pressing down, suffocating me with each passing moment. I don't remember how I got home, only that I woke up the next morning in my car, parked haphazardly in front of our house. My head throbbed, my mouth dry and sour from the alcohol. I stumbled inside, greeted by the silence of an empty house. Sarah had taken Emma to her parents for the weekend, giving us space to process what had happened. The quiet was suffocating. I wandered aimlessly through the house, my thoughts still clouded by the night before. Every room was a reminder of what we had built together: a marriage, a family, a life that now felt like it had been built on lies. I wasn't sure what hurt more, the affair itself, or the realization that the woman I had trusted most in this world had kept something so monumental from me. A pregnancy. A child that might not even be mine. I sat on the couch, my head in my hands, trying to figure out my next move. Should I demand a paternity test right away? Could I even bear to hear the truth if it wasn't what I wanted? And what about Sarah? Could I ever trust her again, even if the baby turned out to be mine? I didn't have answers to any of those questions. All I had was a gut-wrenching sense that my life was spiraling out of control and I didn't know how to stop it. Days passed in a blur. I avoided Sarah's calls, not ready to face her or the situation. I didn't want to talk, didn't want to hear her explanations or apologies. I needed time to think, to figure out what I wanted. But every time I tried to focus, my mind kept circling back to that one nagging thought. What else is she hiding? It gnawed at me, that feeling. Maybe it was paranoia, a byproduct of all the lies I'd uncovered, but something didn't sit right with me. Sarah had kept the affair from me for months, had lied about where she was, who she was with. She had even kept the pregnancy a secret. What else could she have been hiding? I couldn't ignore the thought anymore. I needed answers, and the only way I was going to get them was to dig deeper. So, once again, I found myself snooping through Sarah's things. I felt guilty, like I was crossing a line. But at this point, the trust between us had already been shattered. What more damage could it do? I went through her laptop, her emails, her social media accounts, desperate to find something that would give me a clearer picture of the truth. And then, buried deep in her email archives, I found it. An email from months ago, dated around the time her affair with Liam had supposedly started. But it wasn't from Liam. It was from someone named Aaron. The subject line read, "We need to talk." My heart raced as I opened the email, my eyes scanning the words with growing dread. "Sarah, we can't keep doing this. It's not fair to him, and it's not fair to us. You need to make a choice. Either you tell him the truth, or we're done. I can't live like this anymore, sneaking around, lying to everyone. I love you, but I won't keep being your secret. Not like this. I'll give you one more chance to come clean. After that, I'm walking away for good. Aaron." I sat there staring at the screen in disbelief. Aaron. Another man. Another affair. The room seemed to spin around me as the weight of this new revelation sank in. Sarah hadn't just been cheating with Liam. There was someone else. Someone who had been in her life even longer. Someone she had been involved with before Liam came into the picture. My chest tightened, my breath coming in short, shallow gasps. How could I have been so blind? I thought I had uncovered the full extent of her betrayal, but this was something else entirely. I had no idea how long it had been going on, or how many lies she had told to cover her tracks. And worst of all, I had no idea who Aaron was. I felt sick to my stomach. Everything I thought I knew about my marriage, about Sarah, was unraveling before my eyes. The woman I had loved, the woman I had trusted more than anyone in the world, had been living a double life, hiding more than I ever could have imagined. I needed to know who Aaron was. The next few days were a blur of investigation. I was determined to uncover the truth, to find out who Aaron was and how deep his involvement with Sarah went. I spent hours combing through old emails, social media posts, anything I could find that might give me a clue. And finally, I found him. Aaron was a colleague of Sarah's. He worked at her firm in a different department. He was a few years younger than her, handsome in a polished, professional sort of way. I found photos of him on social media, photos that included Sarah at various company events, always standing a little too close, always smiling a little too brightly. The signs had been there all along, but I had never noticed. I had trusted her too much. As I dug deeper, I found more evidence of their affair. Late-night emails, photos from hotel rooms, cryptic messages exchanged over social media. It had been going on for over a year, long before Liam ever entered the picture. My mind reeled. This wasn't just about Liam anymore. Sarah had been living a lie for so long it was hard to know what was real and what wasn't. Had anything between us ever been real? Had she ever truly loved me? Or had our entire marriage been built on deceit? And then, just when I thought I had uncovered the full extent of her betrayal, I found the final, devastating piece of the puzzle, a bank statement. There, buried in the financial records, was a series of payments, large, unexplained transfers to an account I didn't recognize. The payments had been going on for months, all starting around the same time as her affair with Aaron. At first, I thought it might be hush money, a way to keep Aaron quiet, to buy his silence. But when I traced the account, I found something far more chilling. The account didn't belong to Aaron. It belonged to someone else entirely, a private investigator. Sarah had been paying someone to follow me. I sat there staring at the bank statement, my heart pounding in my chest. Why would Sarah hire a PI to follow me? What had she been looking for? Had she suspected me of something? Or was there something else, something darker that she hadn't told me? The questions swirled in my mind, each one more terrifying than the last. I thought I had been the one uncovering her secrets, but now it seemed like Sarah had been hiding something much bigger, something that went far beyond her affairs. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was missing a crucial piece of the puzzle, that there was still more to this story than I realized. The next time I saw Sarah, I confronted her. I didn't tell her what I had found. I wanted her to come clean on her own. I wanted her to tell me why she had hired someone to follow me, what she had been hiding all this time. But when I asked her, point blank, if there was anything else I needed to know, she just looked at me with those same tearful, pleading eyes and said, "I'm sorry." That was it. No explanation, no confession, just those two words, over and over again. I'm sorry. But sorry wasn't enough. Not anymore. Because now I knew there was more to the story.